Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, it's time now for the conversation on the future of finance in Africa. I love the fact that this subject as well comes very much in line with our hashtag for the day, future of finance in Africa. And of course, the other hashtag is ADFS 2022. Now, so what's the future? What does it hold for us now? And now that we're talking about all these matters and we can tell that we are already on the go, what lays ahead? So if you're outside and you can hear my voice, please walk in so that we can begin this conversation. And I would like us all to pay attention to our keynote address that is coming from Dr. Iwa Salami. And please allow me to tell you about Dr. Iwa Salami through her brief profile. So Dr. Iwa Salami is a reader, associate professor in Law University of East London. Reader Associate Professor there with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. She has published extensively in the field of financial law and regulation, and her list of publications include a book and numerous articles published in peer-reviewed journals. Her book, Financial Regulation in Africa, an assessment of financial integration arrangements in African, emerging, and frontier markets, was published by Ashgate in 2012. She featured as one of 28 fintech leaders surveyed to predict what the future holds for crypto and digital currencies in the Finder Cryptocurrency Predictions Report, July 2020. And so definitely we have really looking forward. We have an amazing person to really speak about that. So Dr. Iwa, I would like to welcome you to address us. Please welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be participating at this event. And thank you so much for the opportunity of doing this. Very conscious of my 15 minutes, but I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, wonderful. So, so thank you very much. I'm delighted to be speaking at this, delivering the keynote speech for this panel, which is the last one. And basically today be talking about the future of finance in Africa and just basically looking at the recent developments in digital finance and how it relates to the African economy. So I could start now, going to the next slide, please. Thanks. So the context really would be setting the scene for why the conversation is happening, and that would be basically looking at the plugging in digital finance to the UN SDG goals as well as to our AU Agenda 2063 goal. And after that, I'm going to be considering the position of the African continent in embracing digital finance and in leapfrogging the space as done. So just basically looking at that, and then dive into looking at some of the developments in digital finance that are occurring on the African continent, and also potential to enhance, if you like, sort of the use of Web3 technologies. I have to say, conscious of the fact that this is the last panel, quite a few panelists would have gone through some of the things I've spoken about. So I probably won't need to spend as much time going over details. And then finally, I would end with the policy approaches that African economies need to be considering in embracing these developments. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the context really is that we still have about 95 or around 95 million people on the African continent that are underserved or financially excluded or unbanked. And in order for us to be able to accentuate this aim of fulfilling the UN SDG goal in helping to achieve inclusive growth, as well as also fulfilling the Agenda 2063 goal of helping to enhance the standard of living for fellow African citizens, there's a need and a role that financial inclusion, or a significant role to be played by financial inclusion, and digital finance plays a key process here. And we've already seen that happening. And typical example is where we are now, where you are now in Kenya, the manifestation of mobile money and the huge progress made with that in facilitating financial inclusion, such that now 96% of households in Kenya have a mobile money account. And I have to say, of course, this has driven that whole conversation around the use of mobile money to achieve financial inclusion across the African continent. Some jurisdictions aren't obviously as quick to embrace it in the way that Kenya has, but there's significant progress being made there. Also, significant progress being made in the area of crowdfunding. We're seeing developments there. Most of the developments are still around sort of donation-based crowdfunding types and reward-based crowdfunding, but there are still opportunities there to be leveraged upon, sort of looking at loan-based and equity-based crowdfunding. And we're seeing some developments here, particularly in South Africa. We're also seeing the existence of challenger banks coming up. Again, here, significant progress made in South Africa, or is being made in South Africa, as well as also considerations of embracing open banking, which again, or all of which again, really facilitates that, if you like, democratization of finance, making it much more competitive, if you like, for financial institutions to provide services, and therefore making it easier for more Africans to actually access finance. But as has been discussed, when we gravitate, whether as a continent or as a region or even as a world, towards digital finance, transferring transactions or engagements onto virtual platforms and online platforms, these call up, or these amenable, if you like, to risks. And so cybersecurity risk, as we just heard in the previous panel, data privacy risks, such as, for example, theft of identity. And therefore, there's still that huge, significant need to really scale up the regulatory framework here. So regulatory framework focused around sort of investor protection and data privacy or data protection and the like. Fortunately, in tandem with that, as again we heard in the previous panel, that RegTech solutions basically meaning technology solutions that help to ensure that these financial services actually comply with regulations that help, for example, protect investors, and also, for example, help to prevent things like money laundering and terrorism financing. So basically, RegTech solutions provider providing solutions that deal with things like sort of transaction monitoring, identity management, risk management, regulatory reporting, and the likes. But I have to say that all these examples that I've just laid out operate within centralized institutions. And basically what that means is we're still transacting. If we want to engage in any financial transactions, we're still going through intermediaries, whether we're looking at crowdfunding in the way that I just explained it, or whether we're sort of looking at transactions through open banking and the like. The next slide, please. Thank you. So the recent technologies and the embracing of Web3 technologies, such as through AI, blockchain, are much more technologies that help us accentuate the part that help users transact on a peer-to-peer basis and place responsibility and onus of users for their data and how their data is used. And these obviously has significant opportunities and potential, as we have seen, or as we're currently seeing in the DeFi space, which permits users to be able to engage in transactions that exist in traditional finance, but now without having to engage through intermediaries, through the help, for example, of smart contracts that have been built on blockchain platforms. So the opportunity to actually engage in peer-to-peer transactions, whether they be lending, borrowing, investment activities. We've also seen development of NFTs. I won't go into this, but these are unique digital assets that present opportunities for people to actually sort of either communicate directly with their clients or fan base, or be able to transfer these unique ownership of these types of assets that can be that can exhibit itself in various forms, whether in art or music. Again, there's a huge potential that these Web3 technologies have built and enabled. And of course, we have the metaverse. The metaverse here also really being a very interesting development that synergizes the technologies I've just spoken about, whether it's AI and blockchain, but with existing technologies that have emerged through virtual reality. And one of the brilliant things here, again, is that we're seeing the usage of virtual reality and augmented reality if you like, to simulate actual environments in tandem with social media and the usage of some of the technologies I mentioned, such as NFTs, to create a rich, if you like, experience for users to interact with those computer-generated environments, and also be able to interact with other users at the same time. And in the area of financial inclusion, one of the ways that we're seeing this manifest itself is in the GameFi space, where, for example, we're seeing applications such as Axie Infinity, which obviously is an application that sits on the Ethereum blockchain, but which also helps users who interact with them, and basically gamers actually, who interact with them earn whilst they play the games, and also earn digital assets that are able to be converted, okay, to other digital assets that can also be converted to our own type of fiat currency. And so here what we're seeing is an integration, really, if you like, of all these technologies happening in the virtual space that have a potential or that are able to be manifested in the physical or the real world, which is a massive opportunity here, not just only in the finance space, but also even from the African context. From the African context, to help Africans, for example, engage in opportunities that can build on those technologies, build on the usage of those technologies to enhance history, culture, introduce the world and people that are unable actually to access, if you like, African history, African culture, African heritage through these developments and through the metaverse in the way that I've explained it. So this is beyond finance now. But of course, these developments in the finance space and beyond the finance would really need the building of robust infrastructure, and that's hardware or software infrastructure, such as, for example, speed in connectivity, in internet connectivity, data storage, and also reliable connection. Okay, and so we're looking at 5G type internet connectivity that will be required to actually leverage these technologies in such a way that it can work for the benefits of the African continent. But of course, very quickly, there are risks, as I'm sure have been covered across the panels that have gone on for the previous days. So NFTs, DeFi, associated with money laundering. We've got investor protection issues. And we've also got the challenges around sort of the regulation of some of the platforms that facilitate, or the platforms, if you like, that facilitate DeFi applications and DeFi in itself. Okay. Then, of course, we've got the environmental issues that are linked with these types of particularly cryptocurrency blockchains, that a lot of which the DeFi protocols actually sit on. Okay, so these are issues that need to be ironed out and teased out. And of course, for us as Africans, and the things that we need to be considering is the extent to which these developments further widen the digital divide, relative to the extent to which they're able to actually financially include citizens, African citizens. So these are things that still need to be worked out and teased out. The next slide, please. Thanks. But what is the policy approach? What policy approaches should African economies be taking here? So African governments really must understand that these developments with three technologies, whether we're talking about AI, blockchain, potential in the using sort of the metaverse, really have a transformative impact on our society and our future. And therefore, African governments should be able to enable the developments, policies, and regulations should be able to enable or facilitate these developments rather than stifle them, because these hold great potential to help us, particularly when we look at developments in the metaverse, help us reflect our culture, our history, our heritage to the world beyond finance now. And African governments also should be able to work through promoting private and public partnerships to advance these technologies. And we have quite significant progress in the space. So we have some cryptocurrency blockchains that are quite interested in working with African economies and African entrepreneurs to help build and promote entrepreneurs in the space, such as the Cardano blockchain and the work that the organization behind it does, and a few other opportunities here that I would take further in, hopefully in the panel discussions as we proceed. Okay, and so therefore there's a need to be able to, for African governments and also the industry to make significant investments in the development of fast and reliable internet, which really are the bedrock for the developments of Web3 technologies and the usage of Web3 technologies in the way that I've described, in facilitating finance, and also even beyond finance in enhancing opportunities in the metaverse, for example. So that would mean that African economies would need to pay attention to dealing with things like power outages, pay attention to dealing with things like internet outages and the like, and also focus on ensuring really rapid developments in regulation to create robust enough regulations that can facilitate these developments, which would basically mean that we have regulatory frameworks that protect investors properly, facilitate data privacy, data protection, and the like. These would be quite significant moving forward. Obviously, one of the brilliant things that would make these work properly from a regional context, that's thinking now of our AU Agenda 2060, is for us to have a coordinated regional approach, which can be achieved through our regional economic communities. Mm-hmm. So the like of your ECOWAS, the East African Community, COMESA, and the like. Yeah. I'd begin to sum up now by saying the policy approach coming from the African economies and the regulatory approach should really be one that facilitates rather than stifle these innovations, the Web3 innovations, as I've spoken about, AI, blockchain, in order for us to be able to use this to enhance the fulfillment, not just only of the UN SDG goals, but also Agenda 20, AU Agenda 2063. And I look forward to sort of expanding on some of these ideas in the panel. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Iwa, for that keynote address on the future of finance in Africa. I think there's a lot to take out from there. But to help us as well demystify this, we have our panelists, some of them in-house and others joining us online. And please allow me to just quickly take you through some of the panelists that we have. So in-house, we have Andreas Fahen. Andreas Fahen is an experienced senior manager within the IT ecosystem, mostly within operation and architecture and design, having more than 15 years of experience in the network operator and TNT business. So I would like to kindly ask Andreas to join us on stage. Please take a seat right here. And we also have Lemuel Mangla. Lemuel is an off-chainer crypto enthusiast and believes in anticipating change and creating solutions that ensure business continuity in a disruptive business environment. So Lemuel, you're welcome as well. Please join me as well. And we also have Elisa. Yeah, we have Elisa as well joining us online. And let me just introduce Elisa as well quickly. Elisa is the CEO Cryptoric. I just didn't want to get it wrong. Cryptoric, absolutely. Elisa is the CEO of
Yeah, it's
Cryptoric.
correct.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for that. And trustee of the Impact in Tech Foundation. She's a serial entrepreneur who successfully built from scratch and sold 2 e-commerces, an investor in 20 plus startups, and a mentor for aspiring business women. Her passion for new technology starts at 15 years old when in the 90s built her first e-commerce. She is now working with blockchain industry for many years, helping traditional businesses to tokenize their assets and their activities. Of course, we can find her speaking at corporations and family offices, coaching leaders about impact investing, tech, financial inclusion, amongst other matters in investing. So welcome, Elisa, as well. And we also have Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. And we have Chris as well, Chris Izu. And very quickly, let me just mention who he is. Chris Izu, very big in designing and implementing business operations. Chris is the current Chief Operating Officer at Patricia Technologies. I don't know whether he's right here presently or he's joining us online, because we had Patricia represented as well. He has years of experience in establishing policies that promote the culture and vision of Patricia. He has experience in leading customer experiences, sales, quality assurance, and operations team over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, I'm shortening some of these profiles because I know they could take some time to read out, but this is just basically to say that we have amazing panelists in the house. And let me start on my left, right here, on your quick reaction on the subject. We're talking about the future of finance in Africa. What would be your quick reaction, especially from the presentation we've had from Dr. Aiwa? Would there be additions or some other things that you would want to clarify, please?
Well, I think, first of all, thanks for having me here. So I was very, very surprised actually to hear one of the problems as well that we have with this digital financial inclusion. I was just recently for 6 months in South Sudan, and I was not even able to make a phone call. So, because mobile networks are not available. So, at least in the countryside. So, if we are talking about those problems, my question is actually not how it will change, but when it will change, and what do we need to do to make a change? Because in the end, we are talking about financial inclusion, and with more technology barriers to be brought up here, how will this actually, and when this actually will be inclusive for everybody?
All right, that's a good, interesting perspective as well. Lemuel, what's your reaction as well on this subject, talking about future of finance in Africa?
Great. Thanks for having me as well. Sure. So what I think Dr. Iwas had a very succinct presentation. So in my opinion, I think I would just want to talk about trade and how possibly decentralized finance and even on the centralized finance aspect before we move from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So just to highlight, I think we've seen quite some activity from the regulatory front, and also considering what the government has been doing. For instance, last year, we had a Kenyan delegation being led by one of the Tier 1 banks and the Kenyan government to the DRC. So DRC has about 100 million people, and it's being integrated to the rest of East Africa. So when we look at integration, especially when it even comes to trade, financial services is making the foray into the region. So after which we are likely to see now more of trade continuing. And when we look at the resources, for instance, that are in the various countries and what the blockchain offers, or when we talk about decentralized ledger technologies, then it puts us in a very, gives us a very opportune moment to actually tap into those resources as well.
Wow, lovely. And I think I'll be getting back to that effect on when it comes to matters trade, because a lot of people will be interested to hear how this is going to be smoothed down.